And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Greetings, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook for Friday into Saturday. And as we take a look at the sea ice, the ice will be growing and expanding southward as we expect offshore flow from the mainland. Bitter cold temperatures well below zero. Some of the coldest air of the season will be settling in here across the southwest mainland. And with low pressure, a series of low pressure systems coming up into the Gulf, the circulation on the backside of the slow will help facilitate northeast northerly flow of air and then northwesterly across portions of the western Gulf and Alaska Peninsula as we go through the weekend. And with the cold temperatures, we will expect the ice to also grow as well. The other issue is any open water south of the main ice will allow for areas of heavy to extreme freezing spray to develop in gale force winds. So that'll pose a danger to any vessels that happen to be out. And then also, we're going to have some rather heavy snow showers or snow squalls develop in response to that colder air crossing the relatively warmer waters of the Bering Sea. So taking a look at the weather map late this Thursday night and early Friday morning, first low pressure, the first impulse coming out of the North Pacific rather quickly. This front will move up across the panhandle on Friday. We still have a ridge of high pressure, Arctic high pressure from Siberia across the northern mainland holding in place. Number of temperatures up here through the central eastern interior will be around 50 to 60 below zero come Friday morning. And then for Friday afternoon, the low lifts up into the lower central portion of the Gulf with the front arcing ahead of it. Stronger winds along this front, 40, 50 miles an hour. So gale force winds could be some higher gusts. And then also accumulating snows, heavier snow in the north end of the panhandle at the Haines and Klondike highways. And then that moisture is going to spread up in through the Copper River basin and produce 1 to 3 feet of snow between Friday evening and Sunday evening. So by Saturday afternoon, we have a double barrel low pressure system extending up through the western Gulf into the North Pacific. A steady stream of moisture, heavy rainfall, icy strait corridor, Juneau, where there was just a ton of snowfall. 2 major storms produced over 60 inches of snowfall in a little over a week's time, back-to-back weekends here, the past 2 weekends in the Juneau area. So that's not good news to get 2 to 4 inches of rain on top of that. So that will cause potential for some flooding and street flooding, as well as increase the threat of avalanches and also increase the snow loads on roofs. So there's the potential for roof collapses as well. And as we look out toward the Bering along the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutian chain, there is this little disturbance as it slides southeastward. This will enhance snow squalls and gusty winds. So definitely the coldest air of the season will be pulling out of the western and southwest mainland and then drawn southward across the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula later this weekend. Taking a look at winds Friday, we expect southeast to east winds. Inner channels 25, 35 knots, highest there up around Lynn Canal with waves 4 or 5 feet. Dixon Entrance could see waves build to 10 feet. For the outer coast off of Craig, we expect southeast winds, 35 to 45 knot gusts there. And then as we go further north, the winds at least earlier, 20 to 30 knots and waves 7 to 9 feet. But again, these areas will see wind and waves building later Friday night and into Saturday. Now for Saturday, we expect southeast winds, inner channels around 20, 25 knots with gusts of 35 knots, Stevens Passage, 40 knots there in Lynn Canal, waves 4 or 5 feet, again as high as 10 feet, Dixon Entrance. Areas along the outer Gulf, generally south winds 25 to 30 knots with waves running 14 to 16 feet. Across the northwestern Gulf, winds will be easterly within Prince William Sound on Friday with 2-foot waves. And strongest winds, lower Cook Inlet. We expect north winds there at 30 knots with waves running around 7 to 9 feet. And then for Saturday, with low pressure lifting up here outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, winds will be northwesterly, Prince William Sound with waves 3-4 feet. But coming out of Kamishak Bay, lower Cook Inlet, northwesterly gales 40-45 knots with waves running right around 8-9 feet. Also the threat of heavy to extreme freezing spray in that environment. And then along Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula Friday, winds generally north 25 to 30 knots, northeast to north gales 35 knots as you tail out the end of the Alaska Peninsula. Ice in place within Bristol Bay, but waves could be as high as 12 feet off there of Cold Bay. And then on Saturday, as winds are going to be more northerly, we have embedded snow squalls, some stronger winds through the gaps along the Alaska Peninsula. We expect winds there 30-35 knots. But some of the stronger winds coming out of here east of Chignik and in the Shelikof Strait coming in off the Katmai area, 35 to 45 knot northwesterly gales. Along the Aleutian chain, stiff northeasterly 40 knot gales. So again, that'll facilitate heavy to extreme freezing spray and large swells. We're looking at waves 15 to 20 feet basically in that environment. And then Saturday, winds continue northeasterly, 35 to 40 knot gales from the central through the eastern Aleutians. Waves on the Bering side running 15 to near 20 feet and 10 to say 17 feet on the North Pacific side. And for the southwest coast, we expect northerly winds out of Bristol and Kuskokwim Bays at 25 to 30 knots. 35 knot northeasterly gales around the Pribilof Islands with waves up to 11 feet and considerable amount of heavy freezing spray there. Lighter winds within Prince or up there toward Norton Sound at around 10 knots, 10 to 15 knots. And then for Saturday, we still have north winds out of Kuskokwim Bay at 30 knots. Again, some very cold sub-zero air just pulling in out of the southwest coast, dropping down along the lower southeast corner of the Bering Sea, along Norton Sound and the lower Yukon Delta, 10 to 15 knot winds. And again, this is going to help also to push and build the ice further southward as we go through the weekend. Along the Bering Strait, southward winds will be out of the north, 15-20 knots. As we come up through the lower Chukchi Sea, look for west-northwest winds, 10 to 15 knots, and then those winds turn back to the southwest, north of Point Lay up through Utqiagvik, 20-25 knots all the way over to Kaktovik. Not quite as strong as recent days, but still holding up. Winds should come down, though, on Saturday. Look for east-southeast winds, 15-20 knots along the central eastern Arctic coast. As we get down here through the lower Chukchi Sea, they turn back around to the west-northwest at 15 knots. And then kind of a mixed bag of winds as we get south of the Bering Strait. We're anticipating winds to be north there around Wales and Port Clarence, but southerly at 15 knots there on the north side of St. Lawrence Island.